What's up, everyone? Tyler Tamboline here, aka Toe Tag and Tambo, back for another edition. This time of the Thursday Night Football Showdown show. I've been doing a lot of them. You know, the Monday night with Blender, Sunday Sunday Night Football, the premium one with Head Chopper. Excited to be back with my man Justin Carlucci. Justin, what's happening?
What's up, Tambo? Ready for week 2? We had a great week 1 across the board. NFL was awesome. It was like Christmas Day over the weekend. A lot of great games. A little weird with some empty stadiums, right? A little bit of eeriness there, but we got some news that some cities are going to ramp up the attendance. So just going to be a lot of change throughout the league. And it's kind of funny, you know, we were talking about PGA briefly, and over the last couple of months, Rory was saying he needs to adjust without the fans. And we'll see how some of these players are adjusting. What's it like for you just watching a game without anybody in the seats? What's your thoughts on that before we get started?
Yeah, I didn't really notice it too much, to be honest. Like you said, for golf, I've liked it. For football, it sounds like they're going to ramp it back up, as you mentioned. But then I saw some reports out of, I think it was Kansas City, where some of the fans had contracted, the COVID-19 or whatever. So I don't know what they're going to do. I'm just hoping it keeps on rolling. Tonight's a good one, man. We got the Battle of Ohio. We got the battle of the number 1 overall picks, the battle of the Heisman Trophy winners. We got Joe Burrow versus Baker Mayfield. It's going to be exciting. Before we get into it, guys, a little bit of housekeeping right quick. Hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe button. We're at 49.9 thousand and change subscribers on YouTube for RotoGrinders. So if you guys can hit that subscribe if you don't already, hit the like button, want to get as many as possible. And then some of the things we're going to talk about here, obviously we're showing it all off. This is a free show. You guys are able to see all the access, lineup HQ, everything that we've got to offer. I'll mention a couple more things, but the link will be dropped into the chat. If you guys aren't signed up yet, you can use the link there, sign up, get a bit of a discount, $5 off your first month. Check out all the premium stuff that we're doing. There's some crazy stuff on the site. Eric Beimfor has an awesome article, super sharp guy. It's called, Slate IQ Breakdown. And he's basically looking at all the leverage points for Showdown that you can get. If it's a semi-close or moderate scoring game, what are the specific types of builds? A lot of people might go with something like Browns 5-1 tonight or 4-2, but it actually shows that, even a 3-3 might be even better, and you might have more leverage there. So we'll get into some of the build types. I know, there's the expert survey with Squirrel Patrol, Head Chopper, E's 819, and then Grant Neefer. He's got his stuff all in there. Everybody's put it together there. That's a good thing. And then I know your boy Will, Chief Justice, him and Head Chopper, they got the premium show for this as well. So there's a lot of stuff going on. Obviously, we're going to bring you right up to lock and just beyond. We've got our lineups in. We're ready to go. I think last week, we might have been, rookies and getting after our first one. I thought it was a, B-, we'll say, but it was still a good show. But I want to make this one a great one. I've got everything primed and ready as far as exposures. We'll talk about our favorite captains, build styles, how we see the game playing out. Maybe we'll start with that. What's your original thoughts just out of the gate? Obviously, if you're building lots of lineups, you're going to be able to get different circumstances, and that's what I personally do. But what's your thoughts on what you really see that's going to happen here in this game? What do you think?
I think Cleveland will play much better statistically. I'm kind of looking at last week as a bit of an outlier. Cleveland just isn't a very good football team, from what we saw last year, and they need to get it together. The game script was very lopsided against Baltimore, as I'm sure you watched very closely as you're a Ravens fan there. You saw Kareem Hunt and Chubb about split snaps, and I do think a lot of that was game flow dependent. Kareem's definitely gonna get in on some Chubb snaps throughout the season. They signed him to a deal before week 1. They obviously like that change of pace there. Kareem Hunt can still ball, but I do think, when you need to get back to basics here and get back on track, you got to go get your pony here, go get some Nick Chubb, kind of let everybody relax. He averaged 6 yards a pop last week, but the game script was just not in favor of the run game there, and the Browns were playing catch up all game. So that's one of my favorite scenarios, is kind of getting back to the ground and pound, playing some physical football. And I like that on Cleveland's side more than I can see a path with Cincinnati.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously some injuries in sense. Cleveland's secondary is pretty beat up, and you got Greedy Williams is out, who I think is an awesome cornerback. So, that's going to matter. I think, Burrow's going to want to get after it. It's first time, Burrow in prime time. We saw him, first game, first touchdown, bust I think it was 32-yard run, take it right into the end zone. So that was impressive, right? You love what you see there. He's got some options to work with. I've got the player pool down, so I kind of just weeded out some of the stuff. For those of you that don't know, if you were trying to take some shots with, everyone talked and saw Auden Tate last year, talked a lot about him in preseason. Well, not preseason, but their training camp, I should say. And it really broke it down to where, it looked like maybe he would get something. He got a little bit last week as far as snaps go, but not much. But he's actually an inactive. So, Mike Thomas is an interesting option at $200 down here. You never know. Got some targets last week, catches. And then if you go up here, if you know, for AJ Green, for me, that tells me that AJ Green is probably just ready to rock and roll. I mean, he had a good week last week, but could have had an even better week. I know one touchdown sailed just over him, or would have been a touchdown. Tight ends, same sort of thing. We're going to remove some of these guys. Obviously, I left Njoku just to remind you that Njoku is out. So that's going to open up some things on the Cleveland side. You know, hearing a little chatter on Harrison Bryant. He's another guy at $200. I probably wouldn't use the $200 guys together in the same lineup, but you do want to mix it up a little bit. So let's start at quarterback. What's your thoughts here between Burrow and Mayfield? And I don't know if I got my exposures up. I'll get your thoughts first and see where you're at as far as usage on those two.
Yeah, I'm pretty close exposure-wise. I'm playing the $10 milli, so I'm kind of close in terms of flex positions. I will be honest, I'm probably not going to use either of them at my captain spots, just the way I kind of see things working out. But you know, you're speaking about Joe Burrow and how he wants to get things going on his first primetime. Nobody needs a better game than Baker Mayfield in the public eye either. They're desperate, and there were some rumblings and some grumblings about Odell Beckham trade rumors. Now, we didn't hear anything that Beckham was demanding a trade. Kind of like Allen Robinson or his agent straight up told the Bears he wants out, right? So we didn't hear that from Beckham, but whatever's going on there, you know, Beckham wants to showcase himself, and you know, Baker really needs to solidify himself as, you know, he was a former first-round pick, and now he doesn't want to get shown up by the new guy in town, literally here in Ohio. So I think this is going to be interesting, and you know, we're looking at stats from last year, and you look at Beckham, and he had like the biggest discrepancy maybe in the league, either first or second in terms of air yards to yards. But Mayfield just hasn't really looked any better. Last week, I didn't see much that indicated that maybe that gap between air yards and yards will shorten, giving him some more catchable balls to Beckham. However, you look at last week and you look at the 14 targets Beckham had, which was twice as many than anyone else on the team, is very encouraging. How much of that was game script dependent, Tambo? I don't know, but still encouraging. I think, you know, my 1B favorite scenario is, you know, feed the ball to Beckham. You know, let's get the train back at the station. And I think they're either going to ride Chubb or Beckham tonight.
Yeah, I'll make some stands out of the gate, you know, starting with quarterback. That's where probably, you know, one of my biggest stands is here. And I'm on more Mayfield than I am Burrow. And it's mainly because of what we're going to get to when we get to wide receiver, because we're going to talk more about Odell. I'm with you on the captain thing. I have a few, you know, I got multiple lineups for sure, but I got a couple Burrow captain lineups only because it's not, you know, it's not just the hedge factor, but he actually does spread the ball out. If you look at how many guys he used as targets last week, there was a bunch of them. So if this game does shoot out or something crazy, most people are looking at this Cleveland running backs and having to decide between them. What if it is a vertical attack and we get this passing game going, right? There is still options there. Landry is going to play. You've got, you know, other guys we talked about as, you know, with Njoku out that are going to have to step up. And then of course, Beckham, who I really like, who we'll get to as well. It's another stand I'm making, but with Beckham in the captain, you know, obviously I'm going to have Mayfield in the flex. For me, you know, don't always have to do that, but I think it's a hard and fast rule. I know, like we talked about last show, one time in the Super Bowl, I think it was Edelman was there and Brady wasn't with him, but it's very rare you see that scenario. So I really like that setup. That's where I'm at as far as the quarterbacks. I'll be probably 20% Burrow and more like 70% Mayfield. I actually do think another stand I'm going to take here while we're on live is that I actually do think the game is going to go over. Last I saw, the total was 43.5. I think a lot of people think about two teams in the Bengals and the Browns as, you know, where's the kickers at? And we'll get to that little narrative street later on. But, you know, we'll maybe talk about it now. It's obviously Siebert got brought on because Bullock missed the kick and then said he had a tight calf. I mean, it really looked like a sore heart maybe. You know, he had a broken heart after missing that and his calf tightened up all of a sudden. But here nor there, I mean, they brought him in. The coaches said already that Siebert's not going to be in. It's going to be Bullock unless something happens. But Siebert was dropped from Cleveland. So it's kind of like a Siebert revenge game that we're probably not going to get to see. Besides that, though, I just don't see that being the flow. The second thing is, and of course, we'll have lineups accordingly, but I'm just saying where the majority, let's say 70% of my lineups are around this shootout and this stuff is we'll segue into running back, is everyone's, you know, saying, let's just go. It's going to be the Cleveland ground and pound. Obviously, you can run all over Cincinnati. There's no secret about that with Chubb and with Hunt. Do you play one? Do you play both? I mean, I've seen this a lot of times. When you get that as the topic of conversation, it worries me a little that it's not necessarily neither, but, you know, it worries me if they are really going to see what we expect. And all of a sudden we see 3 passing touchdowns and these guys are just these tertiary plays that maybe are in an optimal or maybe not, right? Who knows, especially if it goes back and forth. And that's kind of like I said earlier, when you get that article from Eric Beimfor, how he saw it as sort of a bit closer. And yes, Siebert's an act. Does say the coach won't be putting him in. That's I said we won't get to see it, but it was just sort of the storyline coming in that we were talking about that. What's your thoughts on these running backs, starting with obviously the most important one, Chubb versus Hunt, or play both or play none? Where you at?
Yeah, I think you can make a case for playing both. I think there's a tinier path there to playing both, but I think it's realistic. I mean, Kareem Hunt's the guy who was on pace for 75 catches last year, right? So we know when David Njoku's out, they're going to have to, someone else is going to have to step up a little bit. He wasn't getting a ton of targets, but Hunt, they value his presence on the field. I don't mind playing both. It's not my first go-to. I do like Chubb a lot. I do think the Browns will have the advantage in the trenches, and I think that's big. Not sure Mixon's going to have a ton of room to run. I do like these Cleveland receivers, so just in terms of my setup and game script, I don't have a ton of Mixon, running it back with a Beckham or whoever, a captain. So I do like the Browns in this game a little more. You made a good point about going maybe like a 3-3 or a 4-2 more than a 5-1, because I do think the game will be a little bit closer, and I don't think we're going to see a million points, but I don't mind taking the over there either. Just to throw it out there, a guy who, with all the Beckham hype and Nick Chubb, maybe the forgotten man's Jarvis Landry a little bit here. He's just kind of a rock. His last 4 games against Cincinnati, he's had at least 5 targets in each of them. 6 DK points was his clunker, 11, 16. So he's a guy who seems to have a pretty high floor just because, he'll get enough volume and he rarely drops a pass. And, Beckham's downfield accuracy has been pretty poor. And if that doesn't start correcting itself, or, maybe Beckham can't take a slant to the house or something, then he might just have to start chunking it with Jarvis Landry, who's your kind of over the middle chain mover. Nobody's really talking about him across the industry. Maybe his upside isn't elite, but maybe in this type of game where the over-under is 41, 42, you might not need elite upside, especially on DK with the pricing where you can plug in a guy and save a couple bucks and put him a captain. So I don't mind Landry in kind of the larger field, GPPs like the Millie. I just wanted to throw him out there before I forgot.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely get to him. I think the one thing that stood out to me that I'm a little shocked by this is the ownership on Joe Mixon showing here at, 67. I just don't see a lot of builds that set up for it. I mean, the shootout does, so I use them in that. I understand it fully, especially if you're going those 3-3s maybe, or even, something sneaky would be to use him in like the captain spot, pair him up with the Cincy D, and let's say we get a bad Baker Mayfield again. So that's a route you could definitely take, not something I'm high on this week. Like I said, I'm on Baker. I'm also reversed as far as what my ownership is of what I've got as far as exposure goes, I should say, versus what these ownerships are. I've got a lot more Kareem Hunt than I do Chubb. We saw it at the end of last year. Basically, as soon as Hunt came back and was good to roll after a suspension, it was a lot of Hunt and a little bit less Chubb, right? I mean, Chubb is obviously the workhorse, the banger right out of the gates, likely from inside the 5, but there's always that chance. And then especially if they are going to have a little bit more of that vertical attack, I like Hunt for catching the passes and taking off of them. So I do like that. Not really on the guys at the bottom. That's not where I'm going to get my cheap exposure in Dearness Johnson and Pirine. So Giovanni Bernard would be interesting. I mean, especially if you've got Cleveland up and they've got to come back. So I've got a little bit of, interest in him, I should say. But let's move to those wide receivers. You mentioned Landry. One of the stats I saw right before hopping on here, I got the broadcast up just so we could stay live if any other news breaks. But Odell, 11 straight games without a 100-yard game. That's shocking to me. I mean, I've realized how bad that it's been, and I just didn't think it was that bad. I know the injury last year with the hernia, the sports hernia and all that, he's got that fixed and repaired. And like you said, the rumblings of the possibility of the shopping them around. But man, they're not going to really say that out in public. But even if they were shopping him around, I think that this could be a spot to feature him. I still think this isn't like we're going up against some crazy secondary that he can't beat. It's Odell Beckham. It's Baker. I think they're going to want to show out. And I think that Odell is going to be pretty popular. I know he's popular for me as far as my captain spot goes. Where are you at with Odell besides your Landry take, which I like? And I think you can, mix and match or even use both if you want to get, creative and use Landry in the captain. He's going to play. So where are you at with Odell though, based on that?
Yeah, I'm over the field on Beckham for sure, especially at my captain spot. I have a lot of Odell captain. I'm kind of with you and then featuring him tonight. Streaks were meant to be broken, my friend. It's 2020, and he's getting the volume. I know the game, like we said, the game flow last year was in favor of the receivers, but it's not anything new, right? Beckham's volume has been there. Baker just is struggling to find him deep. I'm not scared of these Bengals corners whatsoever. Darius Phillips on the field was even like a 4.5 40. William Jackson, okay, not scratching the itch, and Tavier Thomas. That's on Cleveland side. My bad. But we'll get to there in a second because I do have a flyer on the Bengals side, literally, that I like. But I'm not worried. The corners on both teams are hurting due to injuries here, right? So I could definitely see the over hitting. I don't think there's going to be 1,000,000 points. I think the over could hit, but just with how these two teams have a lot of kinks to work out, right? A lot of timing. Both lines aren't really playing well right now. Both teams are missing pieces. Njoku's out. Both teams are missing corners. We saw a lot of off timing in week 1 across the board, and I don't think that's just going to fix itself in week 2. Everybody was saying, oh, week 1 is the preseason game. Well, what's week 2? Preseason isn't 1 week. So I still think we'll see some sloppy football here, which, is your glass half full or half empty? Are we going to see a couple broken plays that are going to favor one of these receivers? Or, I'm pulling for Mayfield. I'm rooting for the guy. I just don't know, if we're going to see the number 1 overall pick Baker Mayfield. And, I don't know. I'm not crazy about either of these quarterbacks. We talked about that. I'm not going captain with either one of them. But there's another primetime game where there's a lot of routes you can take, a lot of playmakers, a lot of guys are going to get touches.
Yeah, I agree. Cleveland is, one of those things. That's why I said with Baker, I don't really like captaining him because I don't see, versus Burrow could run another one in and hit all these receivers all the way throughout. I don't really see it. Like he's going to keep a pretty tight target tree. It looks like, there's 2 Higgins in this game, Richard and T. We'll get to, those in a second, but I'm not really high. Like, Erickson is sort of a return punt, which I know with no Tate, you might think, but I think T. Higgins would be the guy that would step up here, or Mike Thomas. So I'm going to just pull out him, take out JoJo Natson, not high on him, the other side. But hearing a little talk on Kaderil Hodge, it's $400 receiver. I think last week he got a couple targets. Just let me check here. Yeah, 3 targets, 1 catch for 12 yards. Would be interesting if you don't want to use one of the $200 guys in Mike Thomas. And then when we get to tight end, we'll talk about another. But give me the guy you were talking about at wide receiver. You said you had another guy you were interested in. Who's that?
I do. At the Bengals side of things, I love taking a shot at John Ross, larger field GPPs. We know the guy's a speedster. He was going off last year before he had that unfortunate injury. He was one of the most popular waiver wire pickups across the industry. We saw Auden Tate's out, so that can only help him a little bit. He actually, he outsnapped AJ Green by like 12 snaps last week. AJ Green had a big target share, obviously, and a bunch of air yards. But John Ross is a guy, we're talking about the banged up secondary on Cleveland's side of the ball. He doesn't need much to totally break this slate tonight. And, I'm not super confident in John Ross, doing the thing. He's obviously boomer bust, but I have a couple of shares of John Ross captain in the Millie tournament for sure. And, he's a guy who can take a slant and some broken coverage and make it a track meet or a screen pass 60 yards. Like Joe Burrow doesn't have to be good for John Ross to be good, right? So that's what intrigues me about that.
Yeah, I've got some as well. Use him in the captain. I was going to bring him up. I also like Tyler Boyd. I think it's a guy. The thing about Tyler Boyd is he suits pretty much any game style, right? If the game stays low, he can get you that 8 catches for 70 yards. And if he doesn't get the touchdown, it's still pretty decent, for a game that stays low scoring. He'd probably still be on the optimal at that price. And then if the game breaks wide open, it could be, 10 or 11 in a comeback mode where he needs to get, 11 catches, 120 yards and a touchdown. And then that's going to break the slate for him. But where are you at on AJ Green at the top? Because he's still showing 45% ownership. I thought he would actually be a little less, but I'm still big on AJ Green. And like I said, I really liked when the news came out right before the show, the Tate news, because it kind of tells me that I think he's quite healthy, ready to go. So let's plug him in. Where are you at with AJ Green?
Yeah. I got a good amount of AJ Green as well. I don't have a lot of lineups with 2 Cincinnati receivers, just being totally transparent here. It's pretty much, one or none here. We'll get to tight ends there too. I think, you can make a case for CJ at tight end as well. But just a lot of my bills and kind of my game script predictions here I don't see 2 receivers getting it done. Just totally backtracking here, looking at snap counts. John Ross, 57, Tyler Boyd, 55, AJ Green, 45 last week. Auden Tate saw 15, and we'll see if that goes to Mike Thomas and T. Higgins, who both saw 15 each. Obviously, T. Higgins without a catch last week. So it should be interesting. It's also worth noting, Bernard played almost 30% of the snaps last week. I know you said, depending on what kind of game flow you're interested here, I know we're talking receivers, but he's a guy who's made an NFL living out of, catching the ball out of the backfield, no matter who the other guy is there. And that was a close game last week. It wasn't a total Bernard game script either. And he still saw 30% of the snaps. So I would definitely keep Bernard on the radar if he kind of fits a game flow and whatever build you're making.
Yeah, and I just looked, I'm actually, so here's where I'm at with AJ Green. I'm underweight versus the 45%, but I'm guessing just from what I could see here in front of me, I'm overweight at captain. I'm basically saying if he's having a game, let's have a game and, it be him. So, if I'm using him, it's pretty much in the captain slot. And that's one way you can take it on these slates too, right? If you believe in someone, but you're like, I don't really like, now that I see him, I thought he was going to be much lower owned. I thought like maybe 30%. People might not go back to it, but I guess they're just, struggling and trying to find reasons to use salary, and that would also bump him up. So same thoughts there. I'm over on Ross. I've got like 30% Ross. So I'm feeling that with what you said. I'm over on Boyd. Again, I'm pretty heavy on both sides. I'm hoping for fireworks. That's sort of where I see this game going. I've got a few, hedge stacks, like I said, where you're going on that underweight or that, back and forth, 17-14 or 17-10 game. Really hoping we don't see another Thursday night clunker, but I think that's enough on wide receiver. We'll punch it over to tight end here. Like you said, you wanted to mention a couple. What was your thoughts as far as tight end goes? I know Harrison Bryant was the other guy I was bringing up earlier as the other $200 guy that I've got a few shares of it. I know some others do as well. Just an interesting play. What was it last week? 2 targets, nothing real serious, but it's just the thought of it, if since he really is using their core of AJ Green, Boyd, Bernard, and Ross, and don't really fit in T. Higgins or Mike Thomas, then you'd want to look at the other side. And like I said, where he already has a tight target tree, there is a possibility with no Njoku that he leans on a guy like Bryant, and could be Carlson. I just would think the touchdown would be Bryant. So where are you at here at tight end? And then I got some other takes after that.
Yeah, I mean, what's your opinion on Uzuma? I mean, 72% of snaps. He's 5K. That's not bad. Here's the thing. I don't really think you need to punt too hard this week. I think these prices are pretty friendly in Showdown, right? Like, yeah. I'll have a couple of shares of the, the $400 guy here or there, but like, I'm not going crazy. You can comfortably fit Beckham and Chubb in and like one of the quarterbacks, whatever fits your build. So Uzuma is a guy that just kind of fit. Was he 5K flat? Played 3/4 of the snaps almost, and kind of that, security blanket for Burrow that, who else is the security blanket on that team? Obviously AJ Green, but if AJ Green's only going to play 60-some-odd% of the snaps, and you would hope that number would rise, right? That was week 1. Maybe they're kind of easing into things, right? No real game action. So I definitely think, keep an eye on AJ Green snap count tonight moving forward. I would hope that thing would creep into the 70-75% range there. But I don't mind CJ. Austin Hooper, one of the big signings on the Cleveland side of the ball. No Njoku tonight. Wasn't really targeted last week a couple times. Not really involved. At some point, this guy's going to have to pay his dividends for the Browns to move the football.
Yeah, so I agree on CJ Uzoma. This is going to be a good play tonight, I think. I got an overweight stance on him. I think it's going to be just one of those spots. Like I said, Burrow's looking for these safety plays as well. It fits. Another thing about Uzoma is that him and Boyd are both the same style. How I just mentioned on Boyd, how he can sort of fit any game script. Yep. If it could be that, Uzoma had 5 targets, 4 catches last game for 45 yards, he could do that and still be on the winning lineup, depending on how the game flow shakes out. Or if it goes off, he could just blow it up and really crush it and have like 6 catches, 60 yards, and a touchdown. That would do damage at $5,000. I'm probably underweight on Hooper. Based on these percentages, I shouldn't say probably, I am. I can look at it and see it right here. I've only got about 15% Hooper, and I saw a lot of good takes on him, and I think, you can beat Cincinnati as far as the tight end goes, but I think it was more of a product of Matt Ryan last year than it is of a guy like Baker Mayfield. Now, could it happen? Of course. He likes his short checkdowns. What I like, though, and I didn't really mention the last one, was I was with you on the Landry take, him at 19%, and I've got 30%. So, that tells you I'm not way over, but I do like that more. And then I'm about 10 to 15% under on Hooper, depending on if he's 25 or 30. It looks like around 30 on lineup HQ. So we'll go with that. But, I think it's going to be somewhere in that range, and I'll be underweight there. Not playing a bunch of these other guys. I'm not playing, anybody else except Bryant here. And Bryant, I have very little shares of. And it's only because, like I said, with no Njoku, I think that does matter. And I think it would be Bryant to get the touchdown. But to be honest, I'm not really necessarily zeroing out lineups with Bryant, because that's going to be the thing, guys. You have to remember to talk a little strategy for a second. We got about 10 minutes to lock. But what I do find is when everybody finds this punt play that they want to get behind, I'm okay with that. Because the bottom line is, it's, you're looking for these random one-off events, in a single game variance, high variance slate that we play here. So I get that. But then when you take that, it's like, obviously everybody just wants to jam everybody they can to zero out the lineup. And the next thing you know, you've got it duped with everybody else. So even if your hunch is right and your hunch with the other, 5% that took them, well, 5% in these large fields is still a pretty big number. And then they just zeroed out the lineup. So you're the same as them. So nothing worse than that. If I were you, I would look at it like, okay, I'm down to, Uzoma here with 5K left over. And instead of zeroing out the lineup, I'm going to do something crazy and use Mike Thomas and just hope it's him for Cincinnati that catches the touchdown, or you can flip it and go the other way. I know it's crazy to leave a little bit more money on the table. Some can sometimes be scary, but not something I'd be afraid of on a slate like this. And then lastly, we're not going to spend a lot of time on it. Like I said, there's about 9 minutes to go here, but kicker defense, obviously, if it's the slugfest and you want to build lineups for that, go for it. I just feel like I don't want to see it so much that I'm trying to will my way. Positivity breeds productivity. Let's think about this shootout. Let's think about even at least, 20 points aside here and getting the over. And even if it comes up just short, let's get some scoring, man. Let's see it. So what's your thoughts on the defense and kicker if you were to go with one? I mean, I like setting up a rule to use, not to use both in one. I will sometimes use two kickers for that stupid type lineup, and if it hits, it hits. But where are you at with these guys?
You could, and it could be a stupid game. It really could be a stupid type game. I don't mind it. You want to pair Chubb with both these quarterbacks are young. We don't know what we're getting out of Burrow. Baker Mayfield just has not been playing well, and that's a fact. There could be some stupid plays in this quote-unquote stupid game. It's very possible that a defense is optimal. I mean, if we get a pick six early, right? Like if this is where Mixon becomes one of his paths. The Bengals defense makes a play early and they're up 7-0. They're going to pound the football, right? So obviously we're going to get back to basics here. You can, pair one of these workhorse running backs with their defense and then go light on the other offensive side of the football. If you think the under is going to hit, get these running backs. Kareem Hunt, what do you have, like 12, 13 carries last week as it is? So that was more of a split in terms of distribution. This should be a competitive game. So where the game script is kind of neutral, I think it's going to be a really telling week for the workload in this Cleveland backfield here. So yeah, you can pair Chubb at captain or make a Kareem Hunt captain with the Browns defense in there as well. And vice versa, neither quarterback play is kind of a wild card. They're both wild cards right now. So defense are definitely in play. People sleep on kickers in Showdown, that's for sure. But, there's some of these, high upside boomer bust receivers or like $400 guys or, all the kicker needs to do is lace one through the uprights and he might outscore 3 or 4 of those guys we just mentioned, right? So
yeah. No, you made a good point with the kicker. I mean, these ones are a little bit up there, but it's because of who the teams are, 4.4, right. 4.2K. Normally when they're like 2,800 and you're talking about some of these receivers that you're like, well, obviously that receiver might not even play. He's a wide receiver 4. Right. I know it's earlier in the season. Anything could happen, but at the same time, it's not always something. But I mean, this is almost a situation where, could Cody Parkey, be kicking in the same lineup and kicking multiple field goals where you had John Ross and you were still saying Cleveland, not an onslaught, but 4-2, let's say 4 Cleveland guys, 2 Cincinnati's. And you were coming back with a guy like Ross, hoping that they need to throw him that bomb. Guess what? He drops it. They come up with a couple more drives where they come up short and Cody Parkey kicks another couple field goals. And at 4.4, he just destroys Ross at 5.2. So, that can absolutely happen. You made a very strong point there as far as that's concerned. I think build some lineups accordingly. Go ahead.
I was going to say, finally, a game mode where kickers are relevant in fantasy football. They're often the running joke of season-long leagues and stuff like that. But, yeah, I mean, if you're heavy on the Browns, right, and you play the Browns D, you can play Randy Bullock. If it's an onslaught, if that's the game flow you're going with, the Bengals might just want to put some points on the board, not get shut out. Maybe they'll kick a few garbage time field goals. So there's, kickers are another, you can fit them in many different builds, and they might not be sexy, and you might just want to go with the boomer bust home run John Ross guys, and rightfully so sometimes. But it's funny saying that kickers have decent floors in this type of game mode, but they do.
Yeah, they certainly do. And I mean, they're showing at 17 and 10. I'm just looking at my personal exposures. I've got about 15% of each. So, I'm definitely using them for the same, basically the theory you just talked about, but that's the reason it's so little. And that's, like I said, because 85% of my lineups are geared towards, no kickers needed, right? Like I said, the positivity. We're going to have a big game. Why would we need those? I mean, obviously a kicker can still get there in these big games, to be honest. Just, I mean, there's games. What was that? The Mexico game with like 80 points was the Rams and Chiefs, over 80 points. And man, everybody got there in that game. Defenses had pick sixes, scooping scores, kickers, the whole 9 yards. So I think that's something to look out for. And then I really like your call. I've only got a couple of them, so if it burns me, I'll be pretty choked. But I've got some mix-in captain lineups where I'm using the Bengals D. And the idea would be, like I said, is if we still get a bad Baker, another guy, Blake Robertson, brought up in the chat and said, Bengals can cause Baker more propensity for picks. I think that's true. The one that I don't really have a lot of, so get your lineups in now with it, is the Browns the other way. I mean, you do have a quarterback in Joe Burrow in his second NFL start. Yeah. I just believe in the guy, man. I think I see a lot more. Like I said, a couple hedge lineups, but nothing too heavy. And I think it's just a spot where it's either going to be they focus on the short passes, less chance to make mistakes. He can scramble. He can run. We saw it last week with a 32-yard touchdown. Any final thoughts? We got 4 minutes. Yeah. Going down, we're going to go right to lock. But I mean, what else are your thoughts here as far as the slate's concerned?
Just one other thing. I'm just like looking at prices and stuff, and just the leverage you could get with Landry captain opposed to Beckham. There's only $200 difference in salary there. People are going to say, well, I'm just going to pay up and get Beckham. They're going to see the volume. And I like Beckham a lot tonight. I do. But I'm saying I wouldn't mind a couple of shares of Landry. He's a guy who kind of fits multiple game script builds like you were talking about, right? A guy that just kind of grabs, nothing flashy, catches them over the middle of the field, kind of a security blanket. He's like their version of Tyler Boyd, kind of, right? Kind of over the middle, 12, 15, 18 yards kind of thing. So I do think you can get some leverage with Landry. But yeah, both these quarterbacks are wild cards, second career game for Burrow. Mayfield, second season, whatever's going on. This is a guy, Baker Mayfield, who was going in the 5th round of annual drafts last year, right? And it's just what a difference a year makes here. So hopefully there's some continuity. If he can get on the same page with Beckham, the volume's been there for over 15, 16 games, right? So I like Beckham today. If he's in a great spot, right? The Bengals defense aren't scary at all. And if there's going to be a night, we're going to get back on course and a little bit of the trade narrative going on, I'm pretty heavy with Beckham exposure. So he's one of my 4 captains in the Millia. Strategy, you try to put your eggs in a few baskets here, when there's 300,000 entries or whatever. I'm not one who's going to put like 15% of, 8 or 9 different guys as my captain. I want to be selective and try to pick the 1 or 2 guys that I think have a chance to really break the slate and get more lineups of them. Beckham's one of them for me.
Yeah, anything with groups. Like I said, still a couple minutes here just to chat through. Obviously, that's one of the benefits of Lineup HQ. If you guys haven't seen the link dropped in there yet, like I said, you can go on, use the code, get the $5 off, get your first month, see all the stuff that we talked about tonight. But anything you do in groups on here to separate, like would you use, say, AJ Green and Boyd in the same lineup? I mean, it depends on how many lineups you have, but let's just say you had one lineup. Would that be something you would do?
I'm not. No, not in one lineup. For me, like just today, I mean, yeah, we talked about this could be a quote unquote stupid game or maybe low scoring or whatever, but I'm not playing both defenses. Some people could, I guess try to get crazy, but that's a 0-1 for me, a 0-1 group, Bengals, Browns. I'm only using one of those at most in each lineup. But other than that, yeah, I'm not really trying to stack more than one receiver for the Bengals. I don't mind pairing like Green and Uzomah or like John Ross and Uzomah or whatever, but it's one receiver for me tonight for the Bengals.
And like I said last show, maybe we'll do a strategy show on this at some point, but I think, just a quick one. If you had Green and Boyd and you did want to separate them, you could use at most one player, right? If you wanted to do something with Kareem Hunt and with Chubb, you could plug those guys in and say at most one. If you wanted to make 10 lineups that have them both, you can pop this up and say use exactly 2. And that's not with the captain. You could also, make it separated, and I would turn that group off, obviously, but you could say when Chubb is in the captain, you've got Kareem Hunt down here, and you could use, exactly that, and your lineups would set up with all Chubb captain lineups. So lots of ways you can go about it. There's build rules you can set. Lineup HQ is by far the best tool out there as far as optimizers go. Use it a ton for main slate as well. There's a great, video that Blender HD and myself did where we go out there and show you guys how to use it. It's quite long, but something to take away for a different day. Other than that, not much else. Tell people where they can find you, Luch, and what else you're doing for us this week here at RotoGrinders.
Yeah, look me up on Twitter at the J Carlucci. Feel free to shoot me a DM. Always down to talk shop. Whatever I can do to help you guys out, we're pointing in the right direction over there. I'm at RotoGrinders. The premium tools are second to none. Seriously, we have great analysts. The tools are top of the industry here. I do a weekly preview with TJ Lasig. It comes out every Tuesday, kind of a really early look. And sometimes those early looks in the week, your gut calls, looking at things for the first time, or the lineups you want to stick with. So, check me and TJ out every Tuesday morning. We'll get you started on the right foot. What's your hot take tonight, Tambo, before we get out of here?
50 plus points. Odell goes off. It's a shootout. I'm taking that. I'm going with the over. I've got the bet on it. I think that's the way to roll. Like you said, you can find me as well, guys, here. A lot of different shows on RotoGrinders. Tomorrow, I got the Tourney Takes pod with Killa B, Kirk Dees. Saturday, going to be recording for the Sunday Night Football show with Head Chopper, the premium version. So again, if you don't have it already, hop on and get on board. You're going to be a ton of stuff you find. The whole Core 4 features all the main sports, PGA stuff that I'm doing Monday to Wednesday. And then Sunday morning, catch me back here. The show, about an hour, about 2 hours before lock, goes for about an hour. And then there's crunch time the last 40 to 45 minutes. Other than that, find me on Twitter at ToeTag and Tambo. Hit me up there or in the RotoGrinders Discord. Other than that, enjoy the game. Thank you and good luck.